what I expect is, given Modi's chart and India's chart for the next year, I do expect the deep state will be very active in India trying to topple that Modi government. They will see, they will smell blood, they will smell an opportunity to take down Modi ji and install a government that is basically more pro-US, more like a puppet of US deep state. So those efforts will be strong. So I expect that those forces which want to engineer this coup against Modi government, just like they did in Bangladesh a year back, they basically have some machinations against Modi ji, and then Trump is basically in collusion with them. So it's basically a self-serving play for both of them.
Namaste viewers, this is Vibhuti Jha. This is Jaipur Dialogue USA. As always, welcome to the show. Please like, subscribe, and support our channel. Give your feedback. And we respect your feedback. Today, we are going to talk about the inevitable conversation that is going on today, inevitable happening. And that is India-US relationship in the mercurial, unpredictable Trumpian era. And I'm a supporter of Trump. I'm a big supporter of Prime Minister Modi. Right from 2014 and 2016, I'm virtually torn. Not because I have an emotional dilemma, but there is a geopolitical challenge that both these countries are facing in relation to each other. I am on record having gone and said that the commonality of purposes and convergence of needs and wants are so huge between the world's two most prominent democracies, and the way Trump and Modi got along. Well, I thought this was going to be a golden era in India-US relationship. The uncertainty, unpredictability, unreliability will probably go away. But no, I'm totally wrong as of now, because we do not know which way this whole direction, which whole relationship is moving forward. To talk about this, I have the greatest of pleasure in welcoming Mr. PVN Rao, PV Narasimharao ji, who has been on many channels with his wisdom of star focusing that he has done. And I'm saying it with seriousness and humor. The star gazing that he has done and analysis he has done, he's well known on Indic channels, and he has been everywhere. So, talking before the show started, I said I'm going to recommend him for Nobel Peace Prize, and if the Nobel Committee doesn't agree, then I will request Prime Minister to give him a Padma Shri. Mr. Rao, welcome to the show. You are a dear friend and a wise man. So I wanted to talk to you about this India-US relationship post Trump behavior, Operation Sindoor, and tariff. How does it look like going forward?
Namaste, Vibhuti ji, and namaste to all your viewers. You said that you are wrong, but the thing is, in my judgment, you are not really wrong. This is just a temporary phase. You will end up being right. There are some friends who are jumping the gun and saying that US-India relations are irreparably damaged, and now India is close to China and Russia, and that bloc is going to challenge US. Basically, this is an inflection point in the geopolitical alignment. My take is, if I look at the planetary positions, see, actually taking a step back, even before the elections, I was a little concerned about the upbeat mood in the Indian community who were excited about Trump. It's not that I supported Kamala Harris. I just said that this is not a Ram Ravan battle, but this is a Duryodhan Surpanaka battle. I won't say who's Duryodhan and who's Surpanaka, but the thing is, I basically said, and also I said, in the long term, in the coming years, India-US relations will keep going up and up. But after the elections in the coming year, there'll be challenges, irrespective of whether it's Kamala Harris who wins or Donald Trump. And I specifically mentioned tariffs, basically. The thing is, this is this is a temporary disturbance, in my opinion, rather than a long-term inflection point. This is like noise rather than inflection point geopolitically, because couple of things. One is Donald Trump is running Jupiter Dasha, Jupiter's Vimshottari Dasha,
Yeah.
and Jupiter is in the eighth house in his chart, which is not a great transit for him. This is not a great time for him. He is confused and disturbed, and moreover, for the last few months and the coming 1 year or so, Jupiter is moving much faster than he normally moves. He is what we say in the astrological lingo, he is Atichari, going too fast. And Jupiter personifies the wisdom individually as well as cosmically. He is the cosmic wisdom. And when Jupiter is Atichari, it's like somebody who's running too fast can't focus on anything. If you are still, you can focus. Similarly, an Atichari planet will not basically focus well. So this is a time when the intelligence and wisdom across the world will be a little short, basically short in supply. People will jump to conclusions, will be hasty, they will not think through things. And the other thing is when Trump enacted all these tariffs, and especially when he ramped up the rhetoric against India, Mars and Ketu are very closely conjoined in Simharasi, which is his Lagna. And Lagna is the seat of intelligence. So when Mars and Ketu is the explosive planet who shows mistakes, confusions, etc. And Mars is the planet of aggression and haste. So when they are conjoined over his Lagna, it's not really a time when he thought through. So most likely he basically overestimated his hand. He overestimated the cards he held, and he basically uh, underestimated India's resistance. So he probably expected that India will go along and basically be on their knees, and he did not expect Modi ji to be so aggressive because he thought, oh, he's my friend. He will basically do my bidding. He probably thought that there'll be a deal reached. Perhaps not 50%, it will be lower, but basically a deal reached. And perhaps there are some sticking points in the deal, and the sticky points like maybe agriculture, dairy, and a few other things. And also, probably Operation Sindhu and the downing of some American jets by India is another thing that really ruffled some feathers in the U.S. deep state. And there is another factor. What I expect is, given Modi ji's chart and India's chart for the next year, I do expect that deep state will be very active in India trying to topple that Modi government. They will see, they will smell blood, they will smell an opportunity to take down Modi ji and install a government that is basically more pro-US, more like a puppet of US deep state. So those efforts will be strong. So I expect that those forces which want to engineer this coup against Modi government, just like they did in Bangladesh a year back, they basically have some machinations against Modi ji, and then Trump is basically in collusion with them. So it's basically a self-serving play for both of them. But the thing is, I do expect, based on India's chart and Modi ji's chart and BJP's chart, I do expect that these plans will fail. And after roughly a year of giving it their all, the forces within the deep state, of course it's not the entire deep state, but some certain aspects of the deep state, they will give up. They will give up on Rahul Gandhi, they will give up on Congress, and they will come to terms with the reality in India, and they will cooperate with Modi ji better. And while I say it, there are other aspects of deep state that are still, they will continue to cooperate with Modi ji in the coming years. And as far as Trump is concerned, as I said, this is a mistake, and he's basically waiting for an opportunity to basically correct it, an opportunity so that he can call it a win without being forced to a corner. He can basically call it a win and then make a deal, a trade deal with India. And I am not at all convinced that India US relations are going to collapse. They are, in the worst case, by the second half of 2026 things will be perfect. In the best case, it can be as soon as this coming month, September. Things can be resolved in September. But my best guess is probably around late October, November, December timeframe. Because on around November 10th or so, Jupiter will be stationary uh, at the beginning of Cancer. And that is exactly where Moon is in India's natal chart, independence chart. So India's Moon, who's the third lord of basically optimism, initiative, etc., He's being influenced by a stationary Jupiter. So that will be a very good time for India and India standing in the world, India's relationships with the other countries. So my expectation is around that time frame, basically 3 weeks before or after the time is when a deal will be made. Having said that, I was disappointed that some prominent voices in the American Indian community, in the basically in the NRI community in US, have basically some prominent members with lot of influence have called on Modi ji to pamper Trump's ego and basically make a deal with Trump. The way I see it, this is a great opening for India. India need not be in a hurry because in the end, if this really goes to dogs, it will be US that will suffer more than India. India's trade is enough basically spread out across various countries, and there are other opportunities for India. So it will be more of US loss than India, and I'm pretty confident that US doesn't want to take it there. They just want basically an exit ramp, and there's no need for India to give it soon. India can move some pawns with other countries like European countries, China, Russia, etc., and make US more desperate. If some of these think tanks in Washington DC are concerned that, oh my God, what are we doing? This new bloc, Russia, India, and China, is becoming stronger, and this will be a big blow for US and US dollar going forward. If these think tanks basically press the panic button, that will make they reach in the US government maybe lower than in the previous government, but still they do have some reach in the US government. So it is basically a great opportunity to let US become a little more desperate when you can get a better deal in terms of basically getting a deal that does not force India to compromise on some core principles like agriculture, dairy, etc., and also better terms with respect to defense part of the deal. And thirdly, basically making USC reason vis-a-vis India and Pakistan, and basically some of the closeness that we have seen with Pakistan in the last few months, basically undo that and push Pakistan to a corner. So all these things can be done by India in the coming trade deal. India has to do it carefully, but the thing is, the more desperate US is, India can get a better deal. And in my opinion, uh, Jaishankar ji, Modi ji, Amit Shah ji, Rajnath Singh ji, and Ajit Jawal ji are doing the right things by being aggressive, giving strong signals, playing the hardball, and pursuing all other options, and making Trump wait and making him basically more desperate. So things are, I think they are doing. India is in right hands right now, and in my opinion, this is not going to collapse. It's just a matter of a few months. As I said, probably in the November timeframe, in the worst case, second half of next year. But there is no danger of US India relations going totally kaput.
Very optimistic, very realistic, and very common sense driven uh, opening statement that you made, Rao Saab. I really admire that. I also admire that you said, because I concur with your thought process. And in my conversations with, in my TV programs, I have always been saying that what two things that is very paramount in my life, which I say every disaster offers an opportunity. And every disaster, or everything that you consider a disaster, may not be a disaster.
Yes.
That's also very important to remember. And the third one is that every disaster offers an opportunity. And then we need not get, my favorite word that I have coined, putting sentimental and emotional together. We must not get rhetoric wise too sentimental about things that happen. What we know about Trump, that he always wants to talk about win win win, and you very correctly said he wants a winning situation without being cornered.
Right.
People are talking about. You also brought in a very valid point that many prominent NRIs, and I call them not NRIs, I call them OCIs. NRI is a green card holder or a temporary resident, the resident here. People like you and I are OCIs. We are overseas citizens of India here. We have a lot more stake here. The question here is very simple. There was a point. There was a point in which a very frivolous TV based, TRP based argument had begun to come about. Oh, we don't need America as America needs us. This is the rhetoric I think both countries need to avoid, particularly India. Because what is important here is to take a realistic assessment, which is we do not play a big role in American geopolitical gameplays. America is a superpower of the world. It is playing a game. Democracy, ethics, morality. Yeah, America has always been dealing with dictators and killers.
Yes.
So democracy is a punchline for America. Ah, you are there, you are not a nuisance, but you are not my friend when I need you to do a dirty job, which Pakistan does. This is what is important for India to know. And you very rightly said we cannot compromise on our essential principles. So, right from the beginning, I have said agriculture, dairy, and other things, no compromise. It cannot be done. I want to come to you on one part of this. India ranks very low in US priorities globally. India, US has more worries with China, more worries with Russia, more worries with Iran, more worries of handling Pakistan, more worries about NATO, Europe, Ukraine. India is a happy child. It's a child that doesn't cry for milk. So let India be. We have to now remember how do we play the game, and your input is very critical here. So, how must India go forward in terms of behavioral element, looking at their own position that things are not always that bad. The man who missed the flight from Ahmedabad to London was the one who survived. So it is not a disaster. Think about it.
Mm.
Your
Yeah.
thoughts.
Yeah, that's a great point. See, Indians have to stop being sentimental, stop being really emotional. See, the thing is, we have been in basically in. I'm using the word very loosely, but we've been in slavery, political slavery, for basically a millennium. The Indian community, uh, and because of the colonial rule, first from the Muslim rulers and later from the European rulers, basically there is this craving for acceptance from the foreign rulers, craving for validation. So the thing is, if US does not accept your viewpoint, US does not see you as morally correct, people are taken aback. They don't realize that US doesn't care about morality. Of course, whether it's the right wing or left wing, they talk about morality in their own way. They talk about several woke issues in their own way. But the thing is, it is never about morality in the end. It's about your interests. It's about pragmatism. It's about the national interests. And of course, the two parties may see the national interest differently. But in the end, it's about who will do your dirty job. And like you correctly said, who will basically be a child who doesn't cry. Moreover, more than being a child, who will be a friend who will do your bidding, who will support you on important things and who will not come in your way on important things. So the thing is, India has to find things where India can compromise on US interests, and then also identify things where India explicitly expects US to compromise on this issue. For example, I'll just give an example. In the coming months, as they try to hash out a trade deal, some of these foreign policy issues will also come up. So some compromises may have to be made with respect to BRICS, common currency, pursuing common currency, BRICS currency, etc. So India should be willing to make some informal agreements on some compromises with respect to dealings with Russia and China. But at the same time, India cannot give up on Russian arms yet. Maybe by 2030 things will change, but as of now, India cannot compromise on giving up on Russian weapons. So, and also some French weapons. So, and at the same time, India should pursue developing own weapons. So, India should basically not compromise there. But at the same time, some of the engagement with BRICS, India should be willing to compromise. And secondly, US is really interested in selling a lot of weapons to India. So India can buy, but can put some conditions. Like, for example, Russia is more liberal in giving some source code and basically some customizability. And in my opinion, right now there may not be major wars, and every war that starts may be ending very quickly. But the thing is, we are going to see a major war in the 2030-31 time frame, and this war will need the fighting countries to be very nimble. This is not like World War II or World War One. So you need a lot of integration between various technologies that are used on in the seas, on the land, and in the airs. Lot of tight integration between different technologies, macro and micro technologies, and also various cyber elements, various AI elements. So India has to pursue homegrown technologies, but at the same time allow US to supply defense technology that allows integration with homegrown technology. So there are certain things you can't compromise on in India's interest in the coming decade, and there are certain things you can compromise. And similarly, let's take Pakistan. See, in my opinion, it may seem on the surface to people that India is sorry, US is becoming friendly with Pakistan because US want to check India, and then basically Pakistan will do US dirty job. But the thing is, I expect that US is just playing Pakistan, just like in a way Trump Trump used Elon Musk as his useful idiot. He may be basically planning to use Pakistan and Munir as his useful idiots. So I will not be surprised if Pakistan is dumped very soon, and India can effectively force that by going for the kill in the deal. And one compromise India can make, for example, is tell US we have some presence in Balochistan, but the thing is, I believe in Balochistan, US and China will want to basically control that area as Balochistan becomes independent from Pakistan in the coming years or maybe even months. US and China want to control that region because of the wealth of natural resources there, rare earths, etc. So India can say, okay, we'll basically let you be the senior partner in Balochistan and we'll cooperate with you, but leave Pakistan occupied Jammu Kashmir to us. We'll basically handle that, and we'll basically deal with all the rebellion that is in the POJK and work on its independence and becoming part of India. You basically leave Kashmir to us, we'll leave Balochistan to us, uh, we'll leave Balochistan to you. Stuff like that, basically. I don't want to get into a lot of specifics, but the thing is, there are things that India should be willing to compromise that are important to India, but less important. On the other hand, there are things that are more important to India. So India should basically make it clear to US, these are things that we want, and these are things that you want. And people who are listening may think, oh, this is all transactional. This is also, I mean, how can you do this? You have to be idealistic. But the thing is, in the end, dharma is very subtle. Dharma doesn't mean absolutism. See, Sri Krishna made Dharmaraja lie to so that Drona can be killed. Drona or Bhishma, I forget. But yeah,
Ashwathama Hato Naro Va Kunjaro. That's right.
yeah, exactly. So
Right.
to kill Drona. So
Right.
so that the so the thing is, we may think that, oh, you should not lie, all these ideal rules people may have in mind, but the thing is, in the end, it's about pragmatism. So you want to win rather than lose. You want to be, instead of sticking to what you think is absolute dharma and basically losing, you want to basically be pragmatic, make some compromises, and win in the end. That is better for dharma. So and in my humble opinion, Modi ji has a really good chart, and Amit Shah ji has a he's a very wise man. He has a very strong chart. All these people, they know what they are doing. They, whatever we are speculating here, they are already clear about all this, and they are basically they are pursuing with a very clear vision, in my opinion. But the thing is, in the few coming months, this is what we will see. We will see a long, far-reaching deal, and we may only see certain aspects of the deal on the surface coming in the media. But the thing is, there may be several other agreements that are made informally, which are not visible to us, and which may really define the path of Indo-US relationship in the coming years for the rest of this decade. And also, it may be very important for the geopolitical relations in terms of China, Russia, India relations, as well as Pakistan, South Asia, Pakistan and India relations. So I expect that in the coming months we'll see a lot of diplomacy coupled with trade agreement, and we'll see some good progress. But in the end, this is not done just because the tariffs have gone into effect. I think is it today? Yeah, The tariff,
Today.
50% tariff has gone into effect today. It doesn't mean this is the end of the world. This is just basically your starting position in the negotiations.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful to introduce the word pragmatism. You know, many a times we get stuck in excessive talk, and you gave a very nice, truthful interpretation of dharma,
Mhm.
which is what is important. And people have to remember that. Indians, particularly, will have to remember that. We all Indians have to be careful about that. Appeasement and pandering never works,
Right.
right? Tactful play works.
Yes,
You
yes.
brought about pragmatism. It is very important. Ethics, morality, and all the lofty ideals are political punchlines. They are not the real time in which things operate. Sam, Dam, Dand, Bhed, though these are Cotelia's principle. For me, sometimes it looks like Trump is using them and we are not. So, if demanding your own pound of flesh, there is nothing wrong in it. And you said very clearly and very categorically that we must know what to compromise on or what not to compromise on. Essential
Yeah.
principles. And on a compromise, my favorite example is for all the viewers to understand you cannot compromise with a drop of poison and a gallon of milk. You cannot have a compromise. India needs to draw up that list. I have said this before. What does India want has to be made very clear. And that's what Trump will appreciate more than ambivalence or indecisiveness or waiting in the future to decide. This is the different animal you are dealing with. And that's what you have to remember as part of your Purva Paksh and Shatrubodh. So as
Yeah.
you said, he dumped Musk. And I was telling, for Trump, relationships don't matter. He was deeply in love with his former two wives, who he had no hesitation in divorcing with when the time was over and he went for somebody else. Think about it from that perspective, is that Musk and Modi got the same treatment. I don't need you anymore. So, for American perspective, I'm always thoughtful, where do I fit into the scheme of things?
Hmm.
Because we do not do everything that America wants us to do, and rightfully so. Nothing wrong in it. So, how do we make ourselves geopolitically relevant for America, whether through money, production, manufacturing, defense, or doing some of the dirty job that, append something? So, back to the basic question here now. Tariff is not going to impact. We had a detailed conversation on this on Jaipur
Mhm.
Dialogue as well. The
Mhm.
effect of tariff is 0.2% on the Indian GDP. No problem about that. I think the $2 billion worth of shrimp, I think Indians themselves will consume all of it if it comes to that. So just allow Kerala to do it, Tamil Nadu to do it, and there are enough shrimp eaters. There are Mangaloreans. Every part of the country is, can consume that.
And there are
But
other
what
countries,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. There are other countries. But I will come to another element, the famous irritation of H1B. The
Mhm.
Indians get beaten like a beaten blue, as if H1B, we are the exploiters of that. That is the objection I have.
Mhm.
The way we do not handle the narrative. Everybody, Rubio included, Besant included, oh, we are going to change H1B because only Indians take advantage of that. Well, Indians are not taking advantage of that. You are hiring them. What prevents you from not hiring the Indians? If the quota of H1B is filled up with the STEM educated Indians, is because they qualify. They're not mafia. Indians are not mafia. They are taking advantage of the opportunity that you are extending to them. So tell that we will not take more than 10,000 Indians. You will not get accused, but we need to handle that better. We need to handle that better in terms of narrative building. I have not seen yet, other than myself talking today here, that India must tell America STFU if in reference to H1B, because you are hiring, I'm applying, is for you to take it or not take it, take me. You want to hire people from other countries, you are free to do so. So we need to handle that scenario as if we are the hungry urchins looking for a favor of H1B, which is just 60, 70,000 a year. max. So the question is, what must India's do to protect its own talent and at the same time dignity and respect? I don't need your H1B. You are hiring. I'm not. I'm applying. You hired. Blame yourself for making it India centric. Don't blame Indians for taking your job. That's the wrong narrative, and I'm disappointed that nobody has done it. But I will be talking about it more as we go forward. Your thoughts?
Yeah, more strength to you. This is an important topic to discuss. But astrologically speaking, and honestly speaking, unfortunately, when I look at the last Saturn Rahu conjunction chart, which is effective for roughly, I think, 11 years or so, the next 10 years are really a time in India, US history where anti-immigrant sentiment will keep growing. So the thing is, even though I said that Indo-US partnership will keep growing in spite of these temporary disturbances over the rest of the decade, I'm afraid anti-immigrant sentiment in US will keep increasing in the coming decade. So unfortunately, whether whether somebody is an immigrant on a green card or whether somebody is an immigrant on a visa, a work visa, or some other visa, sentiment against them will keep growing, unfortunately. And the MAGA movement that Trump has uh, nurtured and basically, which is very strong in US today, that will not give up on that agenda, I'm afraid, because US as a country, their chart suggests that the anti-immigrant sentiment will be increasing. So Indians have to navigate this very carefully. In general, the Indian community is not organized. They are not good at uh, advocating for themselves. They are not good at promoting a narrative. And this is true for, see, I want to distinguish between different aspects relating to India. One is the Indian government. They are bad at narrative building in the international community, especially US. Whereas Chinese government, Pakistani government, they engage lobbying firms and they have their tentacles spread across various parts of the deep state. And if you look at US, for example, US deep state tentacles are spread across the media, spread across various powerful entities across the world that are spreading narratives. And US narrative is usually very easy to spread in the world. And China has caught up in the previous years, and India lacks here. India doesn't have a strong narrative building agenda, and we don't really spend money. In the end, it's all about money. If you spend money, you have lobbying groups that are working for you, and you basically have some journalists who are in a way paid by you somehow or the other, and who are interested in spreading your agenda, and also your well-wishers who are already pro-India, if they are somehow enabled materially so that they have the resources to basically spread your narrative, and there is some direction to all of them from the top of the Indian government, that will be helpful. But unfortunately, in my assessment, we badly lack China, US, and a few other countries when it comes to this. And that is one thing. So Indian government's narrative internationally and in US, that is one thing that needs to be done. And the second thing is the Indian community that is living in the US. So we are not really organized. We don't really have any groups or any entities that are lobbying for this community. So that's a problem. And unfortunately, a lot of untrue. See, one thing is taking a step back. Whenever there is this kind of disturbance, there is some element of truth behind it. But the thing is, the little bit of truth is blown up, and lot of mythology is added to it. Lot of damning imagery is added to it, and basically people spread a really bad narrative. And then because there is an element of truth to it, based on something that people may have seen in their lives, it will people will be able to relate to it. So that's the unfortunate part. And then smashing all those negative aspects, all those made up facts, that is something that has to be done actively. Unfortunately, I do see online that lot of energy is being put into it by the anti-immigrant community, and they have a lot of resources. And unfortunately, NRI community doesn't have a lot of resources. So this is something, there is a void here, and this is something where voices like yours and other voices will have to speak up. But just voices talking on some channels will not really solve this. We really need, because in the end, power is money, money is power. Power is power creates money, and money creates power. So some lobbying groups will have to be created with the by NRIs. We have to put money in it, and they have to basically have coherent strategy. Again, you have to be pragmatic. It's not just being emotional. You have to figure out what are the core principles that you want to advocate, and what are the things that you want to compromise on, because you can't just take on a popular movement in the country you are living in head on. So there are some compromises you have to make, but at the same time, there are some core principles you can't compromise on. So you have to be clear-eyed, identify those, and lobby really strong, both on social media and in the regular media. And that is an activity that I don't see at all. And on this note, I want to make a side point, a related point. I want to distinguish between the Indian community in US and the Indian government's agenda. And the third entity is the Hindu community across the world, and particularly in US. These three are three different interests, even though there is some commonality. There is some significant subset of all these. But the thing is, these are different. There is a Hindu interest, and what you can see is there is a lot of anti-Hindu hatred. And unfortunately, the Abrahamic religions have tried to demolish the various pagan traditions from across the world in the last 1,000 years. And they succeeded nearly. And India is the only country where the existing so called pagan religion survived. It was not reduced to a minority. Whether you take Africa, whether you take South America, whether you take Americas, North America, whether you take Europe, everywhere, or whether you take the Australian subcontinent, everywhere the existing pagan religions, which to me are extensions of Sanatana Dharma, they are all parts of the large umbrella of Sanatana Dharma. These traditions have been reduced to a very tiny minority, and the Abrahamic religions have taken over, whether it's Islam or Christianity. But India is the only country where, only major country where the native pagan religion, Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma, has survived. They weakened, but they are still a majority. So this is subconsciously for the Abrahamic religions. This is a big misgiving. This is a big thing that upsets them. So there is this undercurrent, subconscious undercurrent in the US, where the born again Christian movement, the evangelicalism has grown in the last few decades. There is this hatred for India. There is this mistrust of India. There is this hatred of Hindus, and then they mix up the anti-Hindu sentiment with the anti-India sentiment, anti-immigrant sentiment with the anti-Hindu sentiment. If you look at some of the viral posts on social media in the last few months that basically were anti-immigrant, they were specifically talking about Hindus. They were specifically talking about Hindu gods and Hindu faith. So the thing is, they are mixing things up. But we have to be clear, right? There has to be a Hindu activism, which is basically educating about Hindus and pushing back against Hindus, Hindu hatred, and basically pitching Hinduism as not this unenlightened, barbaric religion, but a very enlightened religion that is actually very consistent with modern science, quantum mechanics, etc. It's a very enlightened religion, very broad religion, having various schools of thought that are accommodated within the large umbrella. So push it as an enlightened religion, and push it as something that is consistent with science. Because why I say that is, I do expect that this Christianity, Islam, etc., will weaken in the coming decades. Atheism will be a big challenge to all the religions in the coming decades. So, by pitching Hinduism as this enlightened religion that is consistent with science, modern science, we can basically we can position India, Hinduism, to benefit from this surge of atheism in the world in the coming decade or two. So, pitch Hinduism as a very enlightened religion, and try to basically fight against anti-Hindu hatred in US and across the world. That is one thing. And the other thing is this NRI hatred for NRIs, to fight against it and show the accomplishments of Indians, and also create this narrative that Indian immigrants are the most peaceful immigrants in US. They are most law-abiding immigrants. They are most peaceful, and they don't engage in crime, particularly violent crime. and they contribute to the taxes. They basically contribute to the economy in a major way. They basically contribute to the growth of economy by in terms of starting companies and growing companies, working in companies and growing companies. So identify what are the narratives that you can build which will gel with regular Americans, which will gel with average MAGA people and also non-MAGA average Americans. So identify what are the narratives that you want to basically create and push them aggressively. And don't be disheartened if it doesn't basically you don't create momentum. You don't make headway basically with the efforts that you are putting, because any new effort in the beginning it will be like this, and after you reach a threshold it will be exponentially growing. So
Right.
in the beginning it will be painful, and the thing is Indians expect results immediately, and if it doesn't happen they become sentimental like you said basically. So we have to be pragmatic and identify what are the battles you want to fight and avoid the battles that you don't want to fight, which are basically unwinnable. So identify the strategies that are likely to gel with Americans, appeal that Americans can relate to. And see, for example, if you look at Vivek Ramaswamy, the Republican candidate, former candidate for presidency and now candidate for Ohio governorship, that guy is so pragmatic. He is basically, you look at the topics he talks about what is common between Hinduism and Christianity and makes Hinduism palatable to Christians. And also, when he talks about immigrants, when he talks about Hinduism, etc., he has struck some pragmatic notes. So, I'm not saying he's the role model. He has done some, he has taken some missteps too. But the thing is, you have to identify what are the things that Americans can relate with and talk about those things more. And don't mix up these three activisms: pro India activism, pro NRI activism, and pro Hindu activism. All these three have to be different lobby groups. So you have to basically have clear strategies for all these three and make sure that there is enough money put into all these lobbying efforts. And without that, we'll just be struggling and you'll be doing more shows and I'll be yelling on your shows. We have to, this is time for action. Time for action.
Time for action. Very, very correctly. And I loved it what you said, because I sometimes believe, and I'm a believer in certain things, that you have to take decisions pragmatically.
Mhm.
There is no need to get, it's like when the doctor is not nervous when he's going to perform a surgery. You have to analyze certain situations, that you have to take
Right.
certain actions. And you said a very important thing, that three different triangles:
Yeah.
a Hindu narrative, Indic narrative, and one is the NRI narrative in
Yeah.
America.
Yeah.
The Hindu part, I loved it when you said that we have to create our own communication strategy.
Mhm.
That has to happen from that point of view. A lot of Indians here in America with Hindu names, they are so much more anti-Hindu that everything translates in that fashion.
Mhm.
We have a enemy within, as I call them,
Yeah.
enemy within, and we have enough enemies in India too. And I rank Rahul Gandhi as number one enemy there, and I'm totally unabashed about it, because what is important is that I have said this in this show and a couple of other times. Your anger, I'm angry against Trump for the way he's treating India. All right. But he's doing things in America for the benefit of Americans, of which you and I are part of, right? The element here is, what is important is, what does India want? That list is very important for India to draw. And to that end, that narrative doesn't come out. We
Yeah.
are totally unorganized in terms of fighting back. So there is no organized response to the attacks that happen on Hindus. A very venerable American had told me, and I'm glad you alluded to that, is that we love you Indians as immigrants to this country. You are professionals, you are hardworking, you are family values, you take care of your children, you are in the highest median income, you are not a law and order problem, you are not criminals in this society. Yet we are the target. And that's what we are not able to respond to. So I wanted to come to the other side of the story, the communication and the requirement for Indians to become more aggressive. But I wanted to add the BRICS element here. We
Mhm.
talked about earlier on. BRICS, the five nations of the BRIC, they are larger than G7.
Yeah.
And I have said this before, that if President Xi's brain was bigger than a peanut, he would have seen to it that, and if I can think, he should have thought about it as well, that India is not China's enemy. It's China that is treating India as an enemy, and China is India's enemy. So if China and India were to have an agreement, a friendship non-aggression treaty, that creates the biggest market in the world, and
Mhm.
that's where you control the narrative of the West. And in terms of Shatru Bodh and Purv Paksh, China is so inimical to India that India has to be very careful in what steps it takes with China. Not totally decoupling with West, but also understand that China doesn't give two hoots for all the human rights violations the world talks about against it. They don't give a damn.
Yeah.
They don't care. Why aren't we in that kind of a situation? What must we do to become like China, say, for example, in terms of pragmatic response to the world?
I think Sri Jaishankar ji is doing a tremendous job
Yes,
when they
he
talk about the human resources, human right violations in India. He
Yes,
basically gives it back. The thing
yes,
is, as I said earlier, we become sentimental when they criticize us. The West criticizes us. We should take it easy. Basically, we don't need validation from anybody. By we, I mean Indians.
yes.
Indians do not need validation from the West or anybody. So basically, that confidence, I do see that confidence coming in the Indian society over the last decade or so, and it will keep growing. In my judgment, based on India's chart, the next decade or two, India's confidence will just keep growing, growing, growing. So as the confidence grows, you will stop looking for validation. And who cares if there is a committee formed by US government or United Nations, which basically damns India? We should basically be like China. And regarding the China-India relations, if Russia, China, and India can really become very close, basically if the BRICS become stronger, of course, it can be a challenge to NATO and US, and that is one of the concerns US may have with basically that is one of the tensions between India and US. But the thing is, I genuinely and honestly expect that China and India are not meant to be friends for at least for the next 2 decades. I'm very confident of that.
Yeah.
Moreover, China is prospering now, but today's China is more like Germany of 1930s, basically a superpower in making, which will take down the existing superpower, which is UK at that time and US now. And in the process, they were too aggressive and they collapsed. And I expect China, same thing will happen with China. And I'm very confident that in the next decade itself, China will split into multiple countries. Basically, there are systemic challenges within China. There are tensions under the surface in China, and they are basically being held together by a booming economy. And the world economy is in the process of being destabilized after the pandemic. China will take a hit from it, and India and China will not get along for too long. But the thing is, India should pursue this to basically get better deal from US. But don't assume that suddenly now India and China are friends and we are going to chart a new course for the humanity. That's not going to happen. And remember 1960s, there was this talk of Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai, and see what it ended up resulting in. I'm hopeful. I'm not hopeful that India China partnership will really be sustainable. So what India should do is do not break it. Be with BRICS because we need Russia at least for the next few years. So be with BRICS and basically, but the thing is, if US is nervous about BRICS, tell them, hey, we are a democracy, you are a democracy. Russia is an autocracy, and so is China. The we are not consistent with them. But the thing is, we'll be Salya. Just like Selja, if you remember Mahabharata, Selja was the Sarthi of Karna, and he basically did such a bad job being Karna's Sarthi that he actually ended up defeating Karna. He actually worked against Kauravas, being with the Kauravas. So we should convince India should convince US that we'll be the Selja within the BRICS. So we'll be your guy in that group. So remember, we are very close, but the thing is, we depend on Russia for weapons, and we will slowly decouple it, but it will take years. And meanwhile, we'll be part of BRICS, but we'll make sure that it doesn't go strong beyond a certain threshold. So this is a tough job to do. But the thing is, if these are the right leaders, if you can ask for the right leaders who can navigate this tough path for India, basically keeping the relations with Russia intact and slowly but steadily growing the relations with the US, but not becoming too dependent, basically, and then on our terms in some important matters, in some crucial matters, and then basically play along with China. See, China will use India as a card in their
Yeah,
games with US
yeah.
anyway, and we should do the same. Basically, play along with them and use China as a card when we deal with US. So the thing is, see, in the previous government of Trump, he had capable people around him, but now, in my judgment, there are very few capable people. It's basically a team B, basically, that is around Trump. So he's a very he has Mars in Lagna, and his moon is very afflicted. Though his Mercury is strong, he's basically a smart guy, but he can be hasty, he can be emotional, and that can be taken advantage of. And then he will overrule everybody around him. So that can be taken advantage of. So I believe India has the right leadership to play Trump, but it's a long process. You have to basically be patient and be willing to take some losses in the short term. But the thing is, India be can be the ally that US will be comfortable with, and at the same time be part of BRICS and assure US that we'll be the Salya in the BRICS alliance.
You talked about Shalya. I mean, a very, very important example from Mahabharata. But what I have been saying in my programs and my thoughts is asking Indians, asking Hindus that channel some portion of your anger against Trump,
Mhm,
which is he's given reasons for doing so, also to those enemies within.
mhm, mhm.
Challenge that, because you
Yeah.
use the Sanatan word, and I've said this, by the way. I want to tell you this and to the audience of Jaipur Dialogue USA that I also started a YouTube channel where my focus is only on spreading the word of Sanatan to the world, that we are all the same. Like you said earlier
Yeah.
on, that all the pagan religions were all Sanatanis,
Yeah.
right? All the So to that end, I'm trying to say to you is that let's kind of be very careful. And I want to tell Mr. Modi, do a constitutional amendment. Let's see who opposes it, to add Sanatan to secular and socialist. Add another S. If you cannot drop secular, Sanatan must make a pravesh, an entry into our constitutional part, because that's who essentially we are. That's what is important to begin to introduce to the world around us. So we need to build that narrative. I'm of that opinion. I've considered myself, and I've come to this conclusion that the uncommon sense demands introducing the word Sanatan in our language, that's who we are, the true, authentic, liberal, accepting way of life. You can be whatever you are, but you still can be Sanatan. There is a message to be done. Wanted to touch upon the last topic here. The extraordinary times require extraordinary measures.
Mhm.
And we are in an extraordinary times right now. So one of the things which is concerns me and you as an OCI, Indian Americans, Hindus, we are both Hindus, is is a constant effort in America by certain prominent Hindus, and I'm using the word Hindus again,
Mhm.
who are so hell bent on against BJP, against Modi, that I know on a personal first hand basis where some people have said, it's on record, and I know it. I know the name of the person too, who I chided, who said, we have to remove this bloody Brahmin Jaishankar from his external affairs position. He doesn't know that. These are strong words. And I questioned him. Why such hate? Why such hate about a Brahmin? You know, he doesn't know diplomacy. I said, what do you know
Yeah.
about diplomacy? Yeah. The point of the matter, which I'm trying to tell you, is There are enemies within. How does one deal with that? Because there are many people who are savages. We have, that's the reason why 145,000 Brits ruled over us for as many years.
Yeah.
That is a very big challenge for us, back home and here as well, including people who do not know, okay, we have to do this. We have to mollycoddle America. I said, no, you don't have to mollycoddle America. This is the land of Godfather. You have to make them an offer that they can't refuse. And
Right.
you can do that. That's what we have been talking about. Your closing thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a great point. See, Trump is, some people may be thinking that Trump is the enemy of India or enemy of Hindus. That's all nonsense. Trump is not an enemy of anybody, and he's not a friend of anybody either. He's
Yes.
just transactional. And you basically give him the right transaction, he'll be on your side and he will basically tweet great things about you. So forget about Trump. And like you correctly said, the enemies are within us. And I haven't heard the statement that you mentioned, but if somebody thought Jaishankar doesn't know, Sri Jaishankar ji doesn't know
Exactly.
anything about diplomacy,
Exactly.
it's like saying Einstein doesn't know anything about physics. So it's just dumb, in my
In
opinion.
one
He's
of the
quite
WhatsApp groups,
awesome.
Rao Saab, in one of the WhatsApp group, one member actually asked that person, when are we removing Jaishankar? This is the gall. This is the ugliness of the hate.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm against.
Now, when it comes to the enemies within, whether you are talking about a state or nation or a religion, they will always exist. They will never go away. Just like the Rakshasas and the Devas are all within us, and the Devas inside us, basically the good thoughts, the good qualities, are always having to fight the Rakshasas inside us, who are basically our weaknesses and our negative impulses. Similarly, in any entity, whether it's a party or a religion or a state or a nation, the Rakshasas within will manifest as various leaders, various influential people, various journalists, various influencers, various businessmen. They will always exist. So this is something that cannot be avoided. But the thing is, when your good destiny is unfolding, as opposed to your bad destiny, then the devas inside you will be winning and the rakshasas inside you will be losing. And I am of the firm belief that the previous decade and the coming couple of decades are a time of revival for Hindu society. They're a time of revival for Bharatvarsha. So I'm very confident that the positive forces within India and within Hinduism will prevail. That doesn't mean the negative forces will keep quiet. They will be very aggressive and they will get support from negative forces from outside. And at times it may seem like they're winning, but the thing is, I am confident that this is the time when they will be defeated. In the past, whenever the good was seeming to prevail, the bad finally ended up winning. But the thing is, we are at an inflection point for Bharatvarsha and Sanatan Dharma at this time. In the from 2014 till 2040 or so is really the inflection point. So I'm very confident. I'm very optimistic. So as an astrologer, all I can say is these forces will be defeated. We will not succumb to these forces. And but as a pragmatic person, what I want to say is the destiny, the collective destiny will unfold through collective action, and collective action unfolds through individual action by different people. And some people, if you are of a Kshatriya temperament, I'm using the word temperament, I'm not saying by birth Kshatriya. If you are of Kshatriya temperament, you basically organize, you become an activist, organize in the society around you. If you are of Vaishya temperament, you basically accumulate money and use that money for dharma. You contribute to all these, identify the right activist groups that are basically engaging in this narrative building and contribute to them. And if you are of Shudra temperament, again, I'm not saying Shudra by birth, Shudra temperament. You basically be a soldier on the ground and you support them. You basically be an activist and do a little bit. Don't worry about what is the impact of your work because everything adds up. Little blades of grass add up. And if you're a Brahmana temperament, you basically share your thoughts with them, you advise them, and more importantly, do your sadhana at your home, whether you're doing a daily havan, a daily jap, a daily jhan, daily meditation, a daily singing, whatever your sadhana is, Do your sadhana. You may think that by doing sadhana, you are not directly contributing. No, that's not wrong. There are subtle forces that are basically driving everything that happens on the surface. And those who do sadhana, those who do religious sadhana, they are strengthening those subtle forces, which will basically help the positive destiny of Bharatvarsha and Sanatana Dharma unfold in the coming decades. So contribute in your own little way, whatever you can do, using whichever path is convenient for you. But the thing is, I can guarantee you, in the coming couple of decades, there, irrespective of apparent defeat, basically imminent and apparent defeat at various times, Sanatan Dharma will rise and Bharatvarsha will rise. The Akhand Bharat will rise in the coming decades. So, on that note, I want to
Thank you
basically
very
close.
much. I wanted to also, we had this is a remarkable conversation where I saw that we abandoned common nonsense and embraced uncommon sense. So I might this is the book. There is a type book title, Common Nonsense, Uncommon Sense. What would you want? So I want to quote here Sri Aurobindo's statement,
Hmm?
quote, and I'm reading that. It is the you referred to about dharma and karma rising to a responsibility to everybody. I'm ending that. It says it is the spirit of men that molds a man's fate. It is the spirit of the nation that which determines its history. And that's what is important for everybody to do. So, to end, I want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, the cosmology and astrological wisdom that you have shared with absolute practical wisdom attached to that. That's critical. And I always say to people, Satyame Vijayate, but Satya will not win if you and I don't fight for it. And
Yes.
that's what is important. In our dharma, it is enshrined in our duties to be ready to protect and defend everything that is our own. Begins with your own self and leads on to family, community, country, desh, and world, and the dunya. Thank you very much for joining today. Please like, subscribe, and support our channel. Give your feedback. Thank you, Narasimha Rao ji. See
Thank
you
you.
again.
Jai Hind, Jai Sri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram.